Chapter 1: The Fateful Night. Ronaldo sat alone in his villa, located in the heart of one of Europe's most exclusive neighborhoods. His career was at its peak, achieving a level of success that he could barely imagine as a young man. Millions admired him, his trophy collection was impressive, and his name was etched in the annals of football history. But on this night, despite all the success and admiration, he felt an unsettling emptiness. After a grueling day of training, he collapsed exhausted onto his bed. He thought about the upcoming matches, the challenges ahead, and his plans for life after football. Yet deep inside, something gnawed at him, a kind of restlessness he couldn't quite define. With a sigh, he closed his eyes, unaware that this would be the last normal night of his life. Suddenly, he felt a chill sweep through his body, as if time itself had frozen. His heart began to race, and before he knew it, he slipped into a deep, dreamless sleep. Chapter 2: A Familiar Place, a Strange Time. When Ronaldo awakened, he felt oddly refreshed, almost as if he had slept for years. But as he opened his eyes, he found himself in an environment that felt familiar yet strange. He was in a small, sparsely furnished room that seemed all too familiar. It was the training camp where he had often stayed a decade ago. But how had he gotten there? He got up, confused and disoriented, and walked to the window. The air outside was cool, and he could hear the sounds of the training field in the distance. It didn't take long for him to spot a silhouette of a young man working hard with a ball. Ronaldo stood frozen as he realized who he was looking at, himself, but 10 years younger. The sight of his younger self, so full of energy and ambition, stirred a strange feeling of nostalgia within him. He recalled the time, the difficulties he had faced, and the countless hours spent perfecting his skills. Yet now, with a decade of future knowledge, he saw everything in a new light. Chapter 3: The Temptation to Intervene. Days passed as Ronaldo explored the past and slowly adapted to this unusual situation. The temptation to intervene in the life of his younger self grew stronger with each passing day. He struggled to decide whether to simply observe or share his experiences. But when he saw his younger self going through a tough phase, filled with doubts and insecurities, he could no longer bear it. He decided to devise a plan. If he could help his younger self avoid some of the mistakes he had made, perhaps he could shape an even brighter future for both of them. On a chilly evening, as his younger self sat exhausted on a bench after a grueling training session, Ronaldo stepped out of the shadows. "You look like you could use some advice," he said with a smile. The young Ronaldo, startled by the sudden address, looked up. "Who are you?" he asked suspiciously. "A friend," Ronaldo replied, "someone who wants to help you achieve your goals." Chapter 4: The Role of the Mentor. The following weeks were marked by an unusual exchange between the two Ronaldos. The older Ronaldo pretended to be a retired football player, who had to end his career due to a serious injury. He claimed he wanted to help the young talent avoid the same mistakes he had made. The young Ronaldo was skeptical, but the wisdom and experience that this stranger displayed were impressive. Soon, an odd friendship developed between the two. The older Ronaldo guided him through demanding training methods, spoke to him about the importance of mental strength, and emphasized the need to focus on the essentials. However, as time went on, the older Ronaldo realized that his younger self was beginning to rely too much on his advice. The instincts that had propelled him to become one of the world's best players were being overshadowed. The older Ronaldo was plagued by doubts. Was he interfering with the natural course of his own story? Chapter 5: Doubts and Reflections. With each passing week, Ronaldo became more aware that he was crossing a line whose consequences he could not foresee. As he observed himself from a past perspective, he realized that his younger self was not only talented, but also incredibly stubborn. That stubbornness had been what had carried him through tough times and helped him prevail, even when others told him he could not succeed. But now, with a mentor paving the way for him, the young Ronaldo began to lose his independence. The older Ronaldo could see how the young man was starting to question his own decisions, because he relied on his mentor's advice. The lines between well-intentioned guidance and influencing a young talent began to blur. Ronaldo withdrew for a while and watched from a distance as his younger self managed without his guidance. It was hard not to intervene, but he knew he had to make a decision: let things run their natural course or risk changing everything. Chapter 6: The Decisive Conversation. After days of reflection, Ronaldo decided it was time to reveal the truth. He knew it was risky, but he could no longer bear living in secrecy. He arranged for one last meeting with his younger self, this time in a secluded corner of the training ground where they could speak without interruption. "You've been different lately," the young Ronaldo began when they met. "You've helped me so much, but I feel like you're holding something back. Who are you really?" Ronaldo looked at the young man, in whose eyes he could see himself. "I think it's time you knew the truth," he said calmly, and then told the incredible story of his time travel. He explained how he had been sent 10 years into the past, and how he had decided to help his younger self avoid the mistakes he had made. The young Ronaldo listened silently, unable to believe what he was hearing. But as the older Ronaldo spoke, he began to recognize the truth in his words. He could not deny that this man knew things only he himself could know. "Why did you do it?" the young Ronaldo finally asked. "Why did you want to help me?" The older Ronaldo answered with a faint smile, "Because I knew how hard it would be for you. But now I understand that you have to find your own way, without my interference." Chapter 7: The Duel. After that conversation, the dynamic between the two Ronaldos changed. The young Ronaldo was overwhelmed by the truth, but also inspired. He realized that he could no longer depend on his older self's advice. He had to forge his own path, make his own decisions, and learn from his own mistakes. In one final training session, the young Ronaldo suggested a duel, one-on-one, to see who was the better player. The older Ronaldo accepted the challenge. It was a symbolic act, a passing of the torch from one generation to the next. The duel was intense and emotional. Both Ronaldos gave everything they had. They battled with skill, strategy, and sheer willpower. In the end, the game finished in a tie, and both lay exhausted on the grass, panting and laughing. "You're going to make it," the older Ronaldo said finally, as he got to his feet. "You have everything you need." The young Ronaldo nodded, still breathless. "Thank you," he said simply, though his eyes spoke volumes. Chapter 8: The Return to the Present. In the days that followed, the older Ronaldo prepared for his return, though he didn't know how or when it would happen. But he felt deep inside that his mission there was coming to an end. One night, as he lay down once again in the austere room, he felt the same chill he had felt on the night everything began. He closed his eyes, and when he opened them again, he was back in the present. It felt as if no time had passed, but inside him, something had changed. He was back in his luxurious villa, surrounded by everything he had ever desired. Yet now, with the knowledge of what he had experienced in the past, he looked at everything with new eyes. He knew he could not take the burden of finding his own way from his younger self, but he could give him the courage to do so. Chapter 9: The Discovery. Ronaldo returned to his daily routine, but one question haunted him: what had become of his younger self? Had his intervention changed anything, or was everything as it had been? One day, while sifting through old recordings of his matches, he stumbled upon an interview that transported him back in time. It was an interview he had given himself 10 years ago, but this time he listened with different ears. In the recording, the young Ronaldo spoke of a mysterious mentor, who had helped him during a tough time. "He told me something that changed my life," the young Ronaldo said in the recording. "He told me to listen to my heart. And that's what I did. Ronaldo gasped. He hadn't changed the past, he had made it possible. Everything he had done was part of his own life's journey, a path he now viewed in a new light. Chapter 10, The Timeless Legend. The story of Ronaldo, the footballer who once traveled to the past to help himself, became a legend. But the true secret of that legend was known only to him. Years later, as he looked back from the pinnacle of his career, he understood that it was not the trophies or titles that defined him, but the decisions he had made along the way. And in his heart, he knew he was exactly where he was meant to be, not in spite of, but because of the challenges he had faced. His story became a symbol of hope, courage, and belief in oneself. Thus, Ronaldo not only continued to be one of the greatest footballers of all time, but also a legend who inspired generations of players to forge their own paths, no matter how difficult they might be. The end.